Today on the podcast, I get to talk to my friend Josh Banks. He's an amateur athlete with pro athlete qualities or maybe habits. Um, Josh would text me or talk to me about what he was doing in his off season, setting his goals and his plans for his off season. And it kind of blew me away how good he was at meeting those goals and sticking to his plans and how he was using technology to help organize all of this. So I thought it'd be a great conversation. And it was. I found it really insightful. I hope you guys do as well. Let's go.
Coffee's good. Thanks, Lissa.
Talking about recovery. No, we're talking about off-season training.
Off-season.
Which feels like recovery time, right? Off-season almost feels like the opportunity to recover from an abusive, 8 or 9 months of competing and trying to maintain.
Sure.
So, it's kind of like recovery. I think for me, in July, it will be my 21st year of coaching. Okay? Crazy to think about.
Coaching will be old enough to drink.
Yes. That's a good thought. So I don't think I have known an athlete and a coach, I guess, because you're both coach and athlete for yourself. I don't think I've known a coach or an athlete to demonstrate how powerful you can use your time or how well you can use your time during the off season that you have demonstrated. I know that you're really precise in things, but also kind of like not hard on yourself necessarily about it. And I think that's one of your superpowers when it comes to training, by the way. Most people either hate themselves if they do something wrong and then they just give up, or they hate themselves and just don't want to do it anymore and they just begrudgingly do it, right?
Yeah.
And then it never gets the full result that they actually wanted. But yeah, I can't remember when I started to think about this or notice this at what point, but at some point you started to tell me stuff about your off season, and it might have been about how you were using TriDot and how you were using Fuel In and how you were cutting weight and your goal was cutting weight, and then all of a sudden that goal got dropped even lower and it was still working.
Yeah.
I was like, and your swim times, that was part of it as well. Obviously that's something I'm going to care about. And I was just really impressed and surprised. From my perspective, with my marathon swimmers, we took about 20 weeks to do a speed program, and everyone got faster, but only faster by 5 seconds or so for a 50 or 100, probably 100. So it's good to see those gains, but I don't feel like they were getting the gains that you were getting with your off season.
Sure.
And so I just wanted to know your secret sauce. I wanted everyone to know your secret sauce. So I want to know a little bit about how you got started in triathlon, because I think that matters for sure, right? How you perceive yourself as an athlete matters on how you're going to treat yourself in the off season too, I think.
Yeah,
so how did you get started in triathlon?
So triathlon for me started as just a way that I was searching for some way to keep in shape. I had done Muay Thai and Jiu-Jitsu before that.
Oh, cool.
So I was searching for something else, something that wasn't going to beat my body up. And personally, my school that I just really enjoyed going to was kind of weaning off some of the opportunities that I had there, and he was going in a different direction. So I was like, well, what can I do to continue to stay in shape? And my parents had been doing triathlon, and
whoa. Wait a second. You're not that much younger than I am. My parents have got to be maybe a little bit older than your parents. I can't imagine my parents doing triathlon.
So both my parents were born in 1960. So that gives you a rough age on what they were. This was in 2018, so they were about in their mid 50s.
That's
at
awesome.
The time. And they just had a little club in their gym that they liked doing triathlon with, and they really enjoyed doing it. And I was like, yeah, that's not for me. And they, at one point, my mom had plantar fasciitis.
Mm-hmm.
My dad had a busted shoulder, so this was not a great endorsement of triathlon in general, but I was like, well, let me see if I can do this as well. And they were like, hey, I can't bike or run. That was my mom with the plantar fasciitis. She's like, but I could swim. My dad couldn't swim because of the shoulder.
Right.
And they were like, well, but we could do a relay and we could all do it as a family. And I was like, okay, but I'd want to do all three together. And so my wife was like, well, I'll do the run. And so she ran, my dad biked, and my mom swam.
Nice.
In this little sprint triathlon. There was a Three Little Pigs triathlon down in Smithfield, North Carolina.
Nice. Shout out.
Really well put on. Yeah, really well put on. It was a great race. I really enjoyed it. But what I enjoyed more was the training and the puzzle, trying to solve how do I fit in swimming, biking, and run training in an optimal kind of amalgamation, if you will.
Yeah.
To still progress. I was a swimmer in high school, so I was like, well, I could just hop back into this. I mean, I hadn't done it in over a decade, so it was not like I was like, hey, I'm a great swimmer, swam in college. Like, I stopped in high school, and then we're talking 13 years later trying to pick
And you
back
only
up.
swam for, like, your high school team. You didn't swim year-round in high school.
No, I swam
like for like a USA club or whatever.
I would do camps in the summer, and then I would help on the deck with the women's in the fall.
Yeah.
And then I would swim in the winter.
Okay.
So I was somewhat year-round, but I was always a sprinter. So I got away with, we've talked about this a lot. I got away with a lot of bad habits of, holding my breath all the way down and then taking one breath on the way back, which tried doing that in a triathlon for 750, 350, depending on what your sprint distance is. The 1500 in the Olympics is never going to work. You can't hold your breath for 20 minutes. So
Not well.
So I had to relearn a lot of new things, right?
Yeah.
So that was how I got into it, and I loved how different the training was than just going and running all the time or just going and biking. It was constantly changing things up, and the problem of how do I fit this all together to still progress. And so I started right after that race. I signed up for 3 more. There was a little series called the Rex Wellness Series there in North Carolina, and so I signed up for that. It's just super sprints. They were nice and short, so it was good to get my feet wet doing that. I went and bought a ton of books.
So this is what, probably like 2018, 2019?
Still 2018.
Okay. So you really haven't been involved in triathlon for like forever.
It was the race was in 2019.
Yeah.
It was 2018 that I was training for it. So I bought all the books for coaching. Yeah, so it wasn't, I just bought a bunch of coaching books. How do I learn all about it that I can, digging into racing with power, digging into what's a better way to swim, digging into cycling. I bought a new bike because I bought this little cheap thing to do in triathlon. I was like, oh, this is actually enjoyable. I really like it. So then I'm going to go actually get a decent bike that I'm going to use. Set the goal of doing an Ironman within 2 years. So the goal was Ironman in 2021.
Why was that your goal? I'm just curious, because it always seems to be everyone's goal. When they first start, it's like, I got to do an Ironman. My mentality does not go to Ironman, but that's because of how I think about athletics in general.
Yeah, so same for me now, but I think in general, people look at Ironman as the pinnacle triathlon. It's like, that's the goal for triathlon. I think that's just the aura about it.
It's like almost a cultural, like triathlon cultural thing.
Yeah, a little bit. And they just, I think Ironman kind of put triathlon on the map here in America. It's not so much necessarily elsewhere, but when you tell people you do triathlons, the initial question is like, oh, have you ever done a full Ironman?
Right. Yeah, that's true.
I think that was kind of some of it was like, oh, I just want to do that to check it off, do a bucket list. And so I set that goal for 21, meaning that I wanted to do my first half Ironman in 2020, and then we know what happened in 2020.
Yep.
Races.
Not many races.
Nope. Races got pushed. So I actually did my first half Iron distance, because it wasn't Ironman branded, May of 21. So, and then turned around and did a full in 21 as well. So
in the fall.
In the fall, yeah.
Nice.
So
okay.
September, so 3 months later.
And in doing the Ironman and the half, did you basically found not for you, or not how you want to focus on it?
Not at that time. I was still like, oh, this is fun. I'd love to do it again. Signed up for the Ironman again another year later, and we had to kind of push that one, so it ended up being 2 years later that I got my next Ironman in. But that brought us to last year's Ironman long distance.
Yep.
I did both a short distance draft legal race and a long distance Ironman, and I just went, for me personally as an athlete, I can't focus on speed and focus on distance. It had to be one or the other, and I love trying to get faster.
That's where I'm at.
So, yeah.
So I'm like, Ironman? No thanks.
Yeah, so, and that's where I got to your thought process of like I want to go fast.
Right.
The Ricky Bobby, want to go fast.
I feel like that decision that you were just talking about, like, oh, I did my Ironman, but I want to focus on speed. I think that decision, just like kind of knowing your off season, led to a very successful off season. It was like a very clear decision that you've made, not to distract yourself or try to like do both at the same time. So that's probably step number one, right? Is be very decisive and like, what is the discipline that I'm going to focus on? And for me personally, having coached many Ironman athletes and Olympic distance athletes and sprint athletes, the sprint athletes and the Olympic distance athletes always seem a little bit happier, right? They're just a little less worn down. They have a lot more family time. They have a lot more free time. And so a lot of the Ironman athletes will do an Ironman, and then they'll go, you know what? I'm going to try this Olympic stuff. And then they do an Olympic, and they go, this is so much better. I still get to work really hard. I still get the challenge of all the training and the variety of training, but I don't have to spend 20 hours of training to actually be successful. So most people do kind of like check that box off. Oh, I did an Ironman, but then they realize this isn't sustainable for long term necessarily for most people. But what is sustainable is something shorter, like an Olympic.
Yeah, I think it depends what makes you happy.
Sure.
Each athlete's going to find something more enjoyable.
Yeah.
Pushing your lactic threshold and pushing that high end is not for everybody. And especially some injury-prone athletes would much rather just focus on going low and slow, getting out in nature, going for long bike rides. I think why people get worn out or burnt out, not in a physical sense, but from that mental perspective, is that they got to go out. They have all these family obligations. They have all these different things that they got to do in their life. And then they're trying to fit Ironman training, which they're going out and doing 6-hour bike rides on Saturday. Then
right.
Turning around and doing 2-3 hour runs
right.
on Sunday. And it's just that becomes this unsustainable lifestyle for them, where then they're like exhausted after that, doing that for that day, and then going home and still having those pressures of family and all the rest of that.
Right.
You can do it, but does that fill you up or does that make you feel exhausted? And for me, I want to go fast like we talked about, so that fit in that bucket, and it made me feel kind of rejuvenated. And on Saturdays when I can come home from a 2.5-hour bike ride with some intensity,
which is long, by the way,
I can still come home and I can still not be like, now I'm exhausted on the couch doing all the things that I either didn't fuel right during it, or I just had 5 hours of zone 2, which now I'm exhausted and can't function for the rest of the day. That just didn't fit in the lifestyle that I wanted. Some people get rejuvenated by those 5-hour bike rides, and they're out in nature and they're just pedaling away and they can get used to it. Just wasn't what got me excited to get up in the morning.
Yeah, I definitely get that. So let's fast forward to, we started working together 2023?
22.
Okay.
Right after my daughter passed away.
Okay. When was that?
So my daughter passed away October of 22.
Okay.
And I think that's when we picked up. We had our one-on-one analysis before that, and I was like, look, I don't think I'm going to start until November or later. And so I think we started in November or December of 22. after that. And it was like, well, I'm really focused on doing a marathon because getting into off-season type stuff, I didn't have the focus that I had this year. The focus that year was I want to qualify for Boston, I want to qualify for 70.3 Worlds, and I want to qualify for Kona. Met 2 out of the 3 of those.
Not bad.
But when we started working together, I was like, well, I can start working on some of my technique with the swim, but I'm mostly focused on running because I was trying to qualify for Boston at the Mesa Marathon.
Yep.
So it was a lot of running, which only reinforced that I am much happier as a triathlete than I am as a runner. I looked at a bunch of my friends and I was like, why do you guys run 7 days a week? This is too much. Can't do it.
I can't.
And
Yeah, I can't do it.
And said, well, we can't run off of the bike. So we don't know how you do what you do. So it's just what makes you happy. What type of athlete are you?
Yeah. So I would say your 2023 season was kind of focused on running, and I remember you like trying to qualify for Boston and all that stuff. What about that season prompted you to? What about that season was a prompt to focus on X and Y during your off season, right? What was it that helped you kind of go, this is what I need to focus on in my off season?
Are you asking what in 2023?
Yeah, what about that season?
Yeah. Or what? Okay.
Yeah, that's a better way to phrase it.
So for 2023, I think we talked about I was a little bit all over the map. I was focused, but in a different way. So 2022 leading into 23, I said my run is my weakest thing. I need to focus on that. And so it became the primary, which was aided by try to qualify for Boston, but that's a very different type of running than speed work where I'm trying to up my 5K time, up my 10K time. So doing the Boston Marathon, doing 70.3 Eagleman, and qualifying for Worlds at Eagleman, and then doing a bunch of the local Olympic distance races got me excited about going faster, not necessarily further.
Got it.
And so for that, I just kind of went, I want to get faster. So I looked at that and I went, okay, what do I want next season to look like? I finished September Ironman exhausted, not just from the race, but mentally leading into the race, the preparation leading up to the race. I was just mentally exhausted from the training, like we talked about.
Yep.
I would have much rather gone out and done like a 2.5 hour bike ride on a Saturday, call it good, and gone and done other things with my life that filled my cup back up, and I was mentally ready to train again. So I looked at that and I went, how do I make next season better? I focus on one thing, either speed or distance.
Okay.
Speed was where my passion was, so I said, let's do that. Let's focus on speed. Then that became, okay, if I want to focus on speed, then I want to give as much time as possible to getting faster. Not necessarily as possible, but that I can still fit in with the rest of my life. So giving myself 10 to 15 hours a week of still training, but like that's the goal. So how do I do that and not spend a lot of that planning it? So that was where I came into.
Okay.
Let's find a system that works, because I was writing my training plans last year, and then I had my coach.
Yep.
Looking over them, monitoring, making sure that I wasn't going to crazy town, even though I was. He would know the limits of the crazy town and be like, "Hey, are you sure you want to do this?" And I'd be like, "Yeah, Trent, I can do that." And so.
If you want to shout out to Trent, you can.
Yeah. Trent Hayden was a great coach of mine. Was fully on board with some of my crazy. Like when I looked at him in October after running a 3.5 hour marathon and said, "Hey, what do you think about qualifying for Boston?" Yeah, it sounds like we could do that. Let's shoot for like May or June. And I went, well, that's in the triathlon season, so let's shoot for February. He went, whoa. But he was like, all right, let's try it. And oh, by the way, I want to write my own training plan for that. Let me do that, and then you just monitor. Okay, let's give it a shot. So always on board with that, my type of crazy.
Right.
So yeah. But anyway, so back to the end of that season, I went, how do I maximize that? I started looking for Trent and I had said, hey, you kind of outgrown what I can do for you, and I was kind of in agreement. I was like, okay, let's stay friends, but like I'm gonna go a different direction.
That's the sign of a really good coach, by the way.
Yeah.
When they know that they can't help their client anymore, and they need to let them go.
Exactly.
Right, where a lot of coaches will hold on to people because they want that money.
Sure.
All right, and Trent is just a stand-up coach and a stand-up guy, so it makes a lot of sense.
Yep. Yeah. I've tried to take that into my coaching side too, where I've had a couple people ask me, hey, this, and I'm like, look, I don't know as I'm the best fit for you because of X, Y, Z, or like, hey, I'd love to take your money, but I don't think this is where we're at.
Right.
So, still coaching me, right, but from a different mindset, I guess, for Trent. Anyway, that was when I started looking for platforms to look at, and I used to use a platform called Team Trainiac, which is Triathlon Terran's now My Motive, or Motive, I guess is what he calls it now. Still a great platform, and I like it. I just was really intrigued by the AI backbone of TriDot.
Yeah.
And I was like, hey, let's give this thing a shot. So in October, I started with TriDot, and I said, I'm going to be fully committed. I'm going to just follow their plan and see where it takes me. I also tried, I was thinking about trying out Purple Patch, which is Matt Dixon's, his platform. I settled on the AI backbone of TriDot. The technology really intrigued me. I like to be kind of on that leading edge of some of that stuff.
Sure.
It's not always science-based, so I'm sure as people listen to this, they'll be like, oh, yeah, that stuff's not backed in science. That's not... But
right.
I think as coaches, we have to balance being fully science-backed with what is the leading-edge stuff telling us so that we can be on the front end of that to continue to progress the sport, as opposed to fully and solely relying on what has always worked before.
Right.
So... that was what made me decide on TriDot, and then I looked back at my season and went, how did that go? Where was I from a body composition standpoint? I felt like there was still some fat to be trimmed, both metaphorically and
literally.
And literally. And so that was where I was like, well, let's focus on nutrition. And I went, what was my limiting factor and why I wasn't focused on nutrition last year? Well, one, I was just not fueling right in workouts. I'd do the 5-hour bike rides with whatever I had available, and then I'd just be extremely hungry afterwards, eat whatever was in sight and all this. So I was like, let's actually focus on in-session fueling.
Nice.
And then what was the other thing was, it's just a pain to go plan all your macros, figure out exactly what you need and all that. So again, looking for a way to kind of automate that. There's this book called Automate or Die, I think, that I read 4 or 5 years ago.
Okay.
So that's just kind of been in my mindset of like, let's make things as automated as possible so that we can focus on the things that are important. So for me, that is the training portion of that. So I went with the automation from TriDot, and
nice.
I found an app called Fuelin, and Fuelin has been a great planning tool, giving me my macros, when to eat those macros, what to eat. Not necessarily planning the meals out. They will give suggestions, but
that's nice.
I can link that into my FitnessPal, and it just links right over and goes, here's what you've been eating, here's the macros for it. Just trying to make it as easy as possible to fit those things in. And so I saw from October, I was 158 pounds and about 14-15% body fat, which isn't bad.
No, I would say that's normal. That's better than normal, and where most people want to be. But.
Yeah, and so then now we're sitting here at the end of March, and I'm right around, I hover between 150, 152, and about 11% body fat. So
okay.
I've definitely seen some trimming of that fat, like we talked about.
Yeah.
And it's also come up in my runs, and so we talked about my runs, my bikes, all of that. We talked about like that drop in weight. You were asking about that. That to me was I just want to be as lean as possible while still feeling healthy.
Which is a very hard balance to achieve.
Yep.
I definitely have not personally achieved that balance where it's like I've definitely dropped a lot of weight because of nutrition and exercise, but it wasn't maintainable because I would just started to feel like almost lethargic, I guess is a good way to say it. We're just like, how am I supposed to get up and go 14 miles today? I don't have the energy to get out of bed.
Yeah,
because I just wasn't fueling correctly.
And I think we're for me and where I'm at right now anyway, we're pretty close to that, because I've gotten to the point where I'm like, oh man, I'd get sub 150 and then it'd be a little bit of a struggle. So I'm still monitoring that, but I'm like, well, maybe 150 is right where we want to be, because I still want to feel strong. I still want to be, and if I'm starting to fail on workouts and not be able to maintain the same power that I was, then it becomes this power to weight ratio, which is better. Are my runs still progressing? Is my functional threshold power for my bike still progressing? And if it's not, then maybe that's where we maintain, and we just kind of maintain for a while. And we can always try and lower it, but if we never get over the edge, then we don't know where the edge is, and so then
Yeah, you got to pull that back. But if you don't ever know to pull it back, right, that makes a lot of sense.
And so that's why I do that in the off season, because I don't want to be going over the edge in race season.
Right.
So for me, my mindset of off season is it's build season.
Build season's a better way to describe it than an off season, I think. The connotation of off season gives people the idea that they have the right to be off. Yeah. It's like, if you're going to train for something, you don't really have the right to be off.
Yeah.
You have a right to be better.
And again, it depends on the athlete, right?
Sure.
So what does the athlete want to get out of the sport? And so what's that long-term goal? For me, I want to keep progressing and getting better and better and better, and push the limits of where I can be in the sport.
Right.
Not everybody wants that. Some people just want longevity in the sport. They just enjoy doing it, and they want to. So an off season for them could be a break from the sport to reset mentally. That is not for me. It's a constant progression of how do I get better at this. So off season is build season.
Yeah.
So it's the same mindset that I took with, I'm not going to just hire a coach to lead into a race and then not have a coach. I'm going to continually work with a coach over a few years to continually progress.
Right.
So, and those are the type of athletes that I look to take on as well, is not the, hey, help me build for Ironman, Eagleman, and then it's like, okay, but then what's beyond that?
Right.
I'm looking for that athletes that want to go, hey, I want to do this, and that's multi-years away, and I want to build and continue to be better.
Yes,
So.
I would say pro tip to anyone listening, if anyone wants me as a coach, all you have to say, there's magic words. And the magic words are, I'm in it for the long haul. If someone tells me that, I will drop everything to help them. It's like, ooh, someone who wants to like continually get better and not just use me for like 2 months and then I don't ever see them or hear from them again. I want someone who not just wants to be better, who wants to be connected and wants to understand and wants those insights and wants to understand themselves, and someone who is just going to be committed versus someone who's like, oh, I'm trying this out. Yeah. I'm happy to help someone who's just trying it out, but I don't have that much time in my schedule anymore. So if someone is just wanting to try it out versus someone who's like, show me the way, I'm in it for the long haul, I'm going to pick B, right?
Yeah, sure. And I think skeptics will be like, well, that's because you want the steady stream of income, and I don't think that's it necessarily.
That's not it for me.
Yeah, it's not. So for me, same. I don't want it because I want the steady stream of income, or I want it because I want to know that the work that we built builds towards something else, not just we built to this. I'm happy to help you on your journey, happy to help you get to where you want to be. It's just, again, I want to spend my time building something that's lasting, not building something that's going to be done in 6 months.
For me, it's relationships. I have clients that I've known, I have swimmers that I've known for 13 years, and they still work with me, right? It's about knowing them as individuals, and I know their lives. I truly feel like at some point you're an instructor, and then with time you become a coach, because you have to have that time to understand that person. Yep. And you have to have that time to really like connect, and otherwise you're just instructing them what to do. Yeah. Right. And I like coaching more than I like instructing. I want to go back just a half a step, because I wanted to bring up something that I've kind of been thinking about more recently and noticing a trend. You had mentioned that you like the challenge of trying to balance all three and the training of all three. Two things. Are you the type of person that needs or wants, maybe not needs, but wants a carrot to train for? And I'm asking that question because I'm starting to notice that there's more people who get involved in triathlon. They maybe do like one season of races and don't want to compete anymore, but want to continue to train for triathlon because they enjoy the training. And for me personally, that's the long haul, not someone who says, I want to compete and be the best. I don't care about that per se. What I care about is helping that person meet their goal. And if that person's goal is to just train, that also makes me really happy because honestly, that's the most important thing that we can do for ourselves. It isn't watching Love is Blind, which is important, but taking care of ourselves and training is definitely more important, and it's definitely more important than racing. All right. So like for me, I am recognizing that there are certain people now coming into the sport just for the training aspect of it, which I actually really appreciate. I have been burnt out on competing since college. Like I said, I've been doing this for 21 years. I started coaching right out of college. I have no desire to compete at all. My only desire lies in training. All right. So have you noticed that, or do you think that's a thing that's happening?
I think, again, I think it depends on the athlete.
Sure,
so
absolutely.
You asked if I need a carrot. I'm the type of person that needs a carrot.
Right.
I need those shorter term goals. And we talked about this yesterday at my lesson, right, where I have a lot of races on the calendar.
Mm-hmm.
Running races, bike races, duathlons, triathlons. Not because I'm going to go out there and compete each one, but because I like to have it on the schedule. I like the environment of being around all those people that are all in a common goal, that like to do the same types of things.
It's very supportive.
Yep. I think you pick up techniques that you don't get in just the training aspect.
True.
So bike handling skills in a crit race and bike handling skills on a duathlon, draft legal duathlon. It's just you pick up these things that you don't necessarily get in a training environment, especially in triathlon. Becomes very lonely if you're following a training plan, because your training plan tends to not line up with anybody else's training plan unless you're all going toward the same race. And it just, even then, you don't necessarily have the same coach setting up the training plan, so you may have one thing in your training plan, somebody else may have another. It just becomes it can become a lonely sport.
Yes.
So to me, the races around that tend to be these, they are the carrot at the end of the training to go, okay, I've got something to work towards and look forward to. And,
yeah.
My wife even asked, like, well, isn't health enough to look for? And I'm like, well, no, not really, because that's so ethereal. It doesn't fit in like that specific measurable. You have people talk about SMART goals. It's not really specific and measurable. So how do I keep those? The ultimate goal is to be healthier, right? But these smaller, specific, measurable, attainable, realistic, all go into building that. But it's easier to see these and track my progression if I'm constantly racing, if I'm constantly testing. So every 4 weeks I test with TriDot, right? And we test my 5K time. We test my functional threshold power on the bike. We try to test my critical swim speed. Those are all carrots. So even those are mini races.
Those are carrots for me in training for sure.
Yep. Yeah. So I want to measure whether I'm getting better, and I want to be around some people that are all like-minded, and those are just ways that I fill my cup on that. Some people don't. Again, it depends on the athlete.
Yeah, and I think that's personally one of my goals with Tri Swim Coach is to create an atmosphere and a community that you don't have to necessarily go to a race to get. That you can maybe find someone online that can be sort of like a training buddy, and hopefully even meet people through Tri Swim Coach that live in your general area that you could train with. But it is difficult to find someone to train with because not everyone's going to be the same speed. Yep. You don't want to hold somebody back, right? And you just have to have that mindset. I ran cross country in high school, so I know that mindset, which is what we used to do was you would go out together, but you would come back at your own pace, right? Yeah. And things like that. It's really important. It's hard to find people to do that with. because everyone has to be confident in their own ability to not get lost. You don't want to have to take care of somebody and all those things, right? So it's like, okay, it's hard to find that, especially as an adult, and you have to work on your own schedule, and hopefully someone else can line up with your schedule. So it could be a very lonely sport, but at the same time, as you mentioned at the races, part of the reason why I got involved with Try Swim Coach again was because of the inclusion at races and how people were welcoming and how people like made people feel. Whether it was your first race or your 10th race, everyone's supporting everyone. You know, obviously there's outliers who, you know, might have had a bad day and they get grumpy,
Sure.
right? But overall, it's usually a very pleasant experience and usually a very open-minded experience. And it's just one of those, it's a very rare sport, I think, that you can find that in.
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, I agree with you wholeheartedly. I'm part of Team Varlo for that reason, is like the community aspect of that. And just, they're always out there bringing the energy. They're always out there cheering others on. I mean, there's a great clip from Eagle Man last year where Ginny was, another teammate of mine, was going to finish and this guy was stumbling and she like
That's
picked
awesome.
him up and helped him go across, and she's done this, and she's gone to Kona, she's done all that stuff, right? But she was just like, oh, here, let me help you, and
Right.
helped him get across the finish line, kind of thing, because he was, you know, he was on his last edge, and that's just you don't find that in a lot of other communities and
Right.
races and
Right.
sports. So I agree with you that I think triathlon is one of the most welcoming. It can also be one of the most intimidating,
Sure.
which probably helps lead to that, as you get a lot of people new in the sport that were intimidated at first and realized those barriers that were keeping them from going to do it. And then when they got in it, they realized how welcoming it was. So now they're passing that on to others. And so, yeah, it's another reason I fell in love with the sport.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. Okay. So let's focus up here. Give me some like action plan. If someone was listening and was like, all right, I want to, next season, obviously, for most people, their off season is coming to an end at this point, or their build season is coming to an end at this point. So what are some like actions that people can take to get ready for their next build season or their next off season, however they want to perceive it? How did you? One of the things I was thinking about actually when you were talking about like automating your life in a way, how much time did you have to spend to figure out all those automations? Like, did you spend time researching these things, or did you just kind of like come up and go, oh, look, I'll do that?
So I spent time researching, and I did cost comparisons of all the different things and what I was getting for each one. But to answer your first question there of like, what would I recommend? I would say start at the target and work backwards. When you finish your 2025 season, what did you want that to look like? If you looked back from your 2025 season, you said this, and this happened. Well, there's your goals for 2025. So now you have your target of what 2025 was going to look like, and now you can put specific things into action to make those happen. Is that the losing weight and being healthy? And do I need to focus on my nutrition then at that point? Again, why working with a coach helps, because they can make you kind of ask some of the questions that you don't know to ask to get to that
We
spot.
all have blind spots, for sure.
Yep. So for me, that this year was just the speed focus. So I had the goal of getting my 10K down to around in the 36 to 37 range. That's my goal for the 10K. I think we're getting close on the 5K to being there. The bike was not necessarily as much of a factor, other than to just get out there and start doing some bike races specifically to get some better bike handling skills. And then the swim was to just get down closer to that 20-minute 1500. So those were all the things that, in my mind, those were the small goals. And then I had specific A races. So A races of the Armed Forces Triathlon Championship that I wanted to go do. Hopefully I get picked up for the team again. I did that last year and just really fell in love with the draft legal format.
Yeah.
So that was
It's an
one of the
exciting
things.
format for sure.
It is. And so that's one of the things that made me go, yeah, I really like this short course type stuff. There was that. There's a development race coming up in May that I was like, well, I'd really just love to see how I compete with all of these younger under 23 development athletes that are all going to go be pros one day. So I wanted to try and do that, and then
Watch the future.
exactly, and compete against them and see how I stack up, because that can provide me insights as to where I need to focus more. And then the final piece was to hopefully be on the podium at the end over at USAT Nationals, specifically Olympic and Sprint Nationals. They moved it to Atlantic City this year, and so I no longer had the excuse of, well, it's in Wisconsin.
Right.
Like, I was just always making excuses. I don't want to travel that far just to go to this race. But now it's Atlantic City. It's 4 hours up the road, and I'm like, well, I don't really have an excuse not to now. So I'm gonna
time to get to work.
And so I'm gonna go. I'm gonna try and compete and just see, hopefully, be in the top 10 in the age group, and then from there, I drew what does that look like if I'm gonna be on the podium? What did last year's top 10 look like, so I have a rough idea of where I want to be. And I think I need to be somewhere around that sub 2 hour mark for an Olympic. And so then I started piecing together, well, what realistically could that look like? And so that looks like getting down under 40 minutes for the 10K, getting down to sub 1 hour on the bike, and getting down to a 20-minute swim with a little bit of wiggle room. So I've got to be at like a 20-minute swim, and probably like a 38 to give myself a minute buffer on each transition. So just all those types of things is how I can start piecing those together. And then once I have those goals in mind, I go, well, I'm pretty close on the bike. To be honest, I've done a couple sub 1 hour bikes, so probably not as much focus in my off season and my build season on the bike. My last 1500 was in the 22, 21, 30 range, so I've got some work that I can do there. But my 10K was like 39, and if I want to get that thing really, I think that's where I can progress the most. And so TriDot helps with that a little bit, because they actually give you a percentile ranking where you are within each
that's cool.
of the three, and it's based off of your age group, so that helps as well. So for me, I'm showing that I'm above that I'm in the 81st percentile for biking, and so I'm like, okay, I don't need to worry about that as much.
80-20 rule.
Yeah, and then I'm in the 76th percentile for swimming, so like I'm decent on that. Both those, anything above 75, you're in the top quarter. You're considered elite by their standards. Not elite. I promise I'm not actually an elite triathlete. And then my running is like 72. So that was where I was like, my focus really needs to be on that run to really put myself in that situation where I come off the bike and I'm in a position where I'm not the rabbit getting chased by a bunch of greyhounds. So either that, or I'm the rabbit that can outrun the greyhounds at least. So that's kind of how I look at that, and I focus it.
Yeah, I think what you basically articulated is really good goal setting skills, where you have like a big macro view of everything, and you bring it down to a micro, very detailed, like, this is how my training is going to have to go during this build season, so that I can actually up my abilities in my swim and up my abilities in the run. So that was leading me to a question, but you kind of already answered, which was basically, how much did you change your programming for the build season compared to your racing season? All right, meaning, are you swimming more? Obviously you said you were biking a little bit less, right? So how much of a change was that, or was it not much of a change?
So it's hard to differentiate this season, because I changed to TriDot as well. Right. So I don't know what TriDot looked like in the season last year to tell you how that changed. I will say, I don't know, as I'm biking less, I'm biking different. There's a lot more threshold work and a lot less zone 2 going and biking for a long period of time. I am biking less on Saturdays, but I think when my A races were Olympic distance before, that wasn't much of a change. It's only once I stepped up to Ironman where it really had to be more biking, just because you need the volume in order for the body to hold up over a 10, 12, 16-hour race, depending on how long you're being out there.
Right.
So I can't really answer that question.
Yeah, it's a hard one to answer,
because this is my first, and I'm giving TriDot the full season, and I'd like to stick with them, I think, because I've seen a lot of gains in this build season.
Yeah.
But TriDot has a mentality. One of the reasons I went with them is I kind of looked at their mentality of fast first, and then build endurance, which a lot of people look at your off season, your base building season as build all this endurance, and then we'll sharpen it up to speed. I don't necessarily like that approach as much. I know that's this, again, being on the leading edge. That's the science backed. We've done this all this time. We've done a lot of research on that.
Yep.
But it's athlete dependent. It's what were your limiters before. I think a lot of my limiters were holding that threshold for longer periods of time. So I think I've seen a lot of benefit from threshold. Realize a lot of the studies they've done were already on pros or elite cyclists, runners, where these people already were really good at those sports and they were building 80-20 rule base building, which helped them.
Yeah. I like I had mentioned, it took 20 weeks to build speed in my marathon swimmers. So if it's your first season, maybe your second season, I do think that your builds should be about endurance for the most part. But at some point, you do need to change your mindset, I think. And that even it's not about competing. Just from a fitness standpoint, you don't want to plateau in your fitness. So if you build endurance and build endurance and build endurance, you're plateauing. Your cardiovascular system needs anaerobic work not just as much, but arguably maybe just as much as it needs just aerobic work.
Yep.
So it makes sense that at some point somebody needs to work harder. But I do think it does depend on their background, right?
Absolutely.
Right. Someone new to this should not be trying to do everything at threshold or 90% effort. They need to build endurance and be in that zone 2 for long periods of time, essentially. And this is where I think a coach has to step in, because it helps kind of discover your blind spot of like, oh, I could go run a marathon, but I'm running that marathon all in zone 2. Well, there's a possibility you can run that marathon in zone 3, right? If you train for it and you worked really hard, right? So it's those types of things that I think are nuanced thoughts that maybe someone who isn't got an athletic background and wants to add triathlon into their life as a lifestyle, though they're not going to know those things, right? And so that's where a coach really becomes beneficial and helpful for sure.
And I think that's an important thing to highlight, is that the coach, like a lot of people are like, well, I want you to build my training plan, or like, hey, because I'm considering using TriDot as my coaching backbone, right? And they're like, well, what are you bringing as a coach if TriDot's doing all my training plan? But like, a coach shouldn't be a training plan builder.
Right.
And a lot of them, in reality, they won't. They'll have a pre-plan. That
they built it forever ago.
Yeah, they'll tailor it to you, but they won't. It's not like built for you. So the coach should be training plan manager, but you get to focus so much more. That frees up a lot of your time to then focus on the athlete and focus on, hey, how are you feeling? Hey, what did this specific workout feel like for you? Giving you updates on how that should feel, how your body should progress, and monitoring the data to make sure that you're going to progress and not push over the limit. Or if you do push over the limit, like we talked about, pulling it back before it becomes too deep in the overtraining, or you get injured, all those types of things. So that's where that coach adds the special sauce, as opposed to, well, here's your plan for the week, talk to you next week, or talk to you, you get to talk to them once a month maybe, and depending on the relationship that they have and the contract that you have with them.
Right. Yeah.
So,
and just very briefly, some coaches are better at cheerleading, some coaches are better at technicians, some coaches are better at programming. Every coach should be really good at connecting with a human being and making them feel supported in what they're doing. It might be a different way. I'm not going to be a cheerleader. I'm just not that person. Listen to me. I'm not that person. But if you came to me with concern, or if you came with not even an understanding that you should be concerned, I'm supporting that person the way I support people, which is wholeheartedly. So, it's just different coaches for different people, really.
Absolutely.
So I asked you a question yesterday at the end of our lesson, and I was like, I'm glad I asked that question. So I'm going to ask you the question again, all right? The question was, how do you plan on maintaining your fitness through the racing season, because you have a lot of races? I would say you probably have more races than the average person that I coach. I mean, most people are going to do 2 to 4 races over an 8-month period, maybe a 9-month period. All right, how many races? And I'm not talking about just triathlon.
Yeah. So I have not tallied the number up, and it keeps growing, right? So that's what we talked about. So starting in February, I did West Creek Duathlon, which was a little sprint duathlon put on by the Live Red Foundation down in Richmond. It was awesome little race. I turned around. I just did Rock and Roll Half Marathon DC, right? So then I'm doing Cherry Blossom. I've got the development team race in May, Bear Triathlon.
There was something in June, right? And
Yeah,
you said
so
you had
Bear
like
Triathlon, Armed Forces, if that happens, is also in June. Bears in June. Then I've got July kind of as a reset. August I do Atlantic City.
So we're at this.
Rock
How many are we up
Hall's
to
in
now?
there
Is that 7 or 8?
So we're in the double digits for races. That's the bottom line. Like I'm even losing track. I could pull it out, but it's no.
Right. So you're doing a lot of racing, which is
Yep.
great. There's nothing wrong with that per se, as long as you have a plan to make sure that you don't over taper for these races, because then you're going to lose fitness, and that you can actually maintain all this work that you've put into your build season.
Yeah, exactly. So the way that I did that is, and we talked about A, B, and C races, where A races I'm going to taper down for. Those are the most important. I have 3 of those, which is really more than I would recommend having. One was 8 weeks away, and it was that development. I was like, let me see how I can compete with these kids that are going to go off and be pros.
Yeah.
I say kids, they're 18 to 20 years old. They're not kids, they're adults.
It's best to refer them as athletes.
Yeah. So that one I just went, well, instead of making that a just go out and race it, let's tag it as an A race, and that gives us 8 weeks to build back up and then taper down for the next one. We probably won't, I'm expecting I won't see a lot of fitness gain within that 8 weeks, so that's just going to be where I'm at in May, is going to be just, hey, hopefully we can sharpen and taper back down to make end of June also a great success, but it'll probably be very, very similar to what happens in May in terms of the potential range of outcomes. So to answer your question, how do I maintain that fitness and make sure I don't lose fitness? Not all these races are races. Right? So we talked about, I just did Rock and Roll Half Marathon in DC. That was not, it was a race in the sense that I went out and it was a race that was there and it was on the schedule.
An event.
I was going to do it, but exactly, it was more of a training. So my Sunday run that week was supposed to be an hour with 4 threshold runs in 4 threshold intervals inside of it, with some breaks in between. I just went, well, what does that look like if I ran that on Saturday? Kind of looks like a half marathon. It's going to be the half marathon is going to be a little bit more, and there's going to be more threshold intensity in that. So I took that and I moved that to Saturday, which is normally my long bike with a brick run afterwards. For those that are unaware of what a brick run is, that is just getting directly off of the bike and going straight into a run because your legs feel completely different running off the bike.
Ugh, is all I can describe it as.
So if I move that to Saturday, then I got to move the bike somewhere else. So you can see I'm not tapering down for this. So what that looked like for me on my schedule was Friday was a lighter day. So I was able to get a 2-hour bike ride in, followed by a 20-minute run off of the bike, directly off the bike. So that was my Friday. And Saturday I turned around and did a half marathon. And I was like, the plan for the half marathon is I'm going to go in, run what I think I can run, the goal, like a sub goal, if you will, side quest, if you want.
I like that idea. Side quest.
I wanted to hit roughly 123 and just see if I could do that. I hadn't done any real double-digit running. It was always kind of like 10 and a half was kind of the most I'd run. So I kind of figured I'm going to go out and hold threshold, and I'm going to fade around 9.5 miles.
Okay.
And if I fade, then I'll pick up a walk-run strategy, and that's the training for the day. But I'm not tapering down for it. And then all I'm doing is going, well, it was supposed to be an hour. It took me an hour and 23, 24 minutes. So the 20 extra minutes that I would have had comes off of the next day.
The Sunday,
where I just
yeah.
take a little bit of an easier run, and Sunday was an easy run. It was I was supposed to do 45 minutes. I did 20 minutes.
Got it.
And that's just the way that I kind of moved my training around to hit the event. I like that you call it an event, not a race, because it was a C race for me. So hit the event with the training, but not throw the training plan off the track, so that Monday comes around and I can still do the bike that I was supposed to do on Monday, the swim that I was supposed to do.
I like the idea of maybe doing an event almost in a way to like push yourself, all right? Because you do train, I would mostly by yourself.
Yep.
And I think most people know that you will perform better with other people. All right, if you're in a team environment or if you're in a group environment, you push yourself a little bit more. And so it does kind of help move your ability level up a notch.
Well, in an event like DC Rock and Roll, you have so much of the city coming out to cheer you on as well.
Yeah.
I mean, my mindset going into it, I was like, I want to hit 123. That's 620 per mile for 13.1. I started thinking about that, and then I started thinking about what do my normal runs look like, and I'm like, well, at 620, I'm kind of like pushing it for a lot of these anyway, so I'm probably not going to make that. And I just knew that. But then I got out there with all the cheering, and I went, man, this is pretty good. I hit mile 10, and I went, we're on track more or less. Like, we're still holding roughly a 620 mile. I know there's a cheer zone with one of my run clubs up at mile 11. Let's just push it another mile and get to them. And then you got to that cheer zone, and there was all the energy from that.
Right.
Well, one of my other run clubs is another mile. Let's just keep going one more mile. We hit mile 12.1 with my grit, my multi-sport club, and Every Person Run Club, one of the run clubs I'm a part of. The other one was Northeast Track Club, another great DC run club. So I hit that one at 12.1, and I went, well, it's only a mile to the finish. Maybe we can just keep this going. And so when I went into it saying 123 is really push it up and probably not attainable, I ended up with a 123.25, and that was not tapering.
Right, training
2.5 hours of training the day prior, right? And it was just the energy from that made me go, oh, mentally, I was probably blocking myself from doing that.
Yeah.
So now we need to reassess where we can take those things.
Yeah, and now you have a little bit more confidence as well because of it. And that's a big part of doing any training at all, and definitely a big part of competing.
Yeah.
If you're not confident in what you believe you can do, you're not doing it.
Yep.
That's how that goes, right? And so that's kind of a nice built-in opportunity to build some confidence in an athlete that might not know their ability level or just question their ability level, right? So that's actually a really good coaching strategy. I might use that.
Yeah, go out and do an event. It doesn't have to be a race. Just go out and do an event.
Yeah, I like it. Anything in particular that we worked on in your swimming, right? So I'm going to be very interested in your swimming gains. Can you give us like an insight on like how your swimming was before the build season and now where you're at with your swimming? Any measurements that you want to use work? Lots of people use lots of different measurements. I have people tell me 500 times. I have people tell me 100 times and 400 and 200 times, right? So
yeah, so I mean, I think the biggest success is just seeing that CSS, and it was a stagnation for a little bit. But we made the commitment at the beginning of October, post Ironman. So this was, if you go back to 2022, we started working together. We made the commitment to. I committed to, I'm just going to give my swim over, and we had to retool a lot of things. I grew up as a swimmer with a lot of bad habits in the breathing and high arm, her high elbow coming through, and then I want to get this early vertical forearm, and like it was just I had to go, okay, I'm working with somebody different. I'm gonna have to trust the process, and we'll give it a season. The season times were just what they were, and it was somewhat very, very similar to my times from before. Mm-hmm. And if you look at that from the outside, you go, well, then what was the point of doing that training? The point of doing that training was I would come out of the swims feeling better. So, like, my wife was like, well, your swims are roughly the same as they were last year. I thought you were doing all this work in swimming. And I went, well, they are, but I'm coming out, we've talked about saving heartbeats. I'm coming out feeling better. Look at what my bike and run times were afterwards, and they were far exceeding what I did the year prior. And so it was just a matter of, okay, I'm coming out feeling fresher. Now we went, hey, we're going to focus on speed. So instead of just saving those heartbeats, how do I save those heartbeats but also progress faster? So things that we've been working on now, which I think we're starting to see a lot of gains, is just that acceleration through that back half. Like we've talked
Of your stroke,
about.
yeah.
Yeah, the back half of the stroke, yep. And also just tightening up in the core to really get the most out of that power.
Right,
So,
and I'm going to clarify that. He does not mean squeezed your core while you swim. He
Sure.
means getting his core to be more functional while he swims.
yes.
That's-
Tightening, not necessarily flexing. I'm not trying
Right.
to have...
Right.
Yeah, that's a great clarification. So those are the things that I think focused on. So once we started doing that, in October I tested my CSS. We did
Yep.
400, 200 tests. I think that came out to somewhere around 130 as my CSS. I don't remember.
That sounds
what the
about
exact Times were
Yeah.
somewhere around a 5 minute. I hovered and stagnated a while for about a 5 minute 400.
Yep.
And that was kind of where I stayed-ish. Went to some meters versus yards just based off of the pools I had available. So a lot of those are only somewhat able to be correlated. But the big breakthrough I think this last time was I went, hey, what do you think I've got down to on this last 400?
Which was a great text, by the way.
Yeah, 450. I was like 459 was my last 400. What do you think it was this time? And I think you said somewhere around 450. I think.
Yeah, something like that.
And I was like 447.
Yeah.
And we were like, okay, sweet. About 12, 13 seconds per 100 as opposed to that math doesn't work. 15. Oh yeah, that math works. Yeah, about 112, 113,
Yeah.
which was much better for 400. And it was like, oh, okay, sweet. We're starting to see those gains. And I think a lot of that came from really slowing down. We slowed down in that off season. Slow, smooth as fast.
Yep.
You can't, specifically in swimming, I think that's such a good mentality to have.
Yeah.
Slow down, get the stroke right, and then we can speed it up once you've built the habit patterns of doing the stroke correctly.
Right. Yeah. Did you increase yardage or days that you swam during this build season, or was it just primarily focus on technique and intensity?
Yes and no.
Okay.
Swimming is still 2 to 4 days a week, depending on what's going on. It's still also the first one that falls out because it's the easiest one to go, I can't make it to the pool today.
Yeah.
So, whereas like run, okay, I can just throw my shoes on and go outside. Cycling takes a little bit more, but when I've got a bike hooked up to a trainer downstairs, it's very easy to just go, I'll throw my cycling shoes on, hop on the trainer downstairs. Maybe I don't get to go outside and ride today, but...
Right. Yeah, I think swimming is definitely the most inconvenient of all the three disciplines.
Yeah.
And I tell people all the time, when I was working at Asphalt Green, my office was on top of a pool, and I still chose to run because it's just so inconvenient, right? So I honestly don't know how anyone with long hair can swim in the middle of the afternoon and get back to work. Like, I don't get it. So kudos to you if you can. I want to talk to you so I could hear your pro tips.
So it's always the hardest one, I think, to get to. And so that kind of... I try and swim 10 to 15,000 yards a week.
Okay.
That doesn't... Sometimes that cuts at like 8.
Yeah.
It just depends.
Yeah. I think for someone training for an Olympic, I think, getting around 8 to 1,200 yards or 12,000 yards in would be good.
Yeah.
Would be like a really good goal.
Yeah. So it usually is roughly around 32 to 3,800 yards per session.
Right.
So that's kind of where I go to. So I haven't maybe swam as much as I would have liked. It's probably about the same, but I've focused on the technique, specifically drills in the warm-up, and then potentially some drills in between sets to kind of reset the focus of whatever we've worked on for the past session. And then I just try and speed it up after that, but the main focus is slowing down, setting that stroke correctly, and the focus that we've talked about, and not necessarily the yardage.
Yeah, and I think going back to an earlier comment you made about you weren't fueling enough during your training sessions, most people fail to fuel correctly during swim sessions. And so I just want to point that out, as in general in training, and definitely in season, off season, doesn't matter. You should be drinking some form of hydration in between sets, and you should be checking could do a sweat test and check your weight after you swim. You are sweating a lot more than you think. Yeah. You are dehydrating yourself, and you are losing nutrients as you swim. But because the water is cooler and you don't recognize that you're sweating, people do a terrible job of staying fueled. One of my other swimmers, Beth, who you've met briefly, she's an older athlete, and she had not been fueling during her swim. And this off season she started to, and everything is better. Like, she can train better. She's just feeling better in general. And she felt kind of like an idiot because she wasn't fueling during her swim. And she has a swim background, but it was one of those things that was just a blind spot. And we talked about it. She started doing it, and now she's a lot happier to do her training that way. So
I do think it's important, especially in like triathlon, not necessarily swimming as much, but in triathlon, it is important to get some sessions in where you're not fueling, at least for that first pick your distance. If you're doing an Ironman, you need to be able to swim without fuel for an hour and a half to 2 hours.
Yeah.
Versus might only be that first 30 minutes if you're doing Olympic and you're a 2 minute per 100 athlete. So it is important to get some sessions, but the more important thing for the fueling most of the time in your training is that you're replenishing what your body needs so that you're not beat down at the end of it.
Right.
And you can get to your next training, because the secret sauce, which is not really much of a secret, is continuing to layer sessions on top of each other is what's really going to build you in an endurance sport.
Yeah, and you got to be able to recover for that. And if you don't fuel, you're not going to recover very well.
Yeah.
I would say, from my perspective, I'm not good at recovering. Like, my body doesn't recover, so I tend to work out less and have good results, versus if I work out a lot, my results typically aren't great. Yeah. But I wonder, if I fuel better, if I would have better recovery.
And so what's funny about that, you're bringing up a great point here, is that if you were to ask me my top 3 things for getting better in triathlon, training and your training plan and all of that would fall at number 3.
Okay.
Like, your training plan, how much work you're putting in would fall at number 3.
All right.
The first one would be recovery. Nutrition goes into that a little bit, but when I say recovery, I mean like sleeping enough. If you're not sleeping 8 hours, I have athletes ask me, well, what if I'm a normal 7 hour a night per person? I'm like, that might be your baseline, but you're probably training more than you ever have in your life, so that probably needs to be up to 8. So my main thing when I go to look at my next day is I go, okay, when does my first event happen? Whether that's eating breakfast, whether that's getting up for a 20, 30-minute run, whatever the case may be, I backtrack that. So again, starting at the target and working backwards, I go, this is when I need to be up and moving. I want to be up probably an hour prior to that. So then what's the 8 hours before that? That's when I need to go to bed. And so that just kind of has always worked out that it falls right around the 10 o'clock, wake up at 6 and be able to get out the door or eat or do whatever I have to do. Sometimes I push that back to 9. Now we're trying to be in bed by 9 so that I can be wound down and fall asleep. Because when I say 8 hours, it's not like, well, I was in bed at 10 and I didn't fall asleep until 11 and I woke up at 5 and laid around checking my phone for another hour.
Yeah.
Like, it was I am in my bed at 9 so that I'm doing whatever. Everybody's got their techniques of no phones, no electronics.
Right, whatever it is you
whatever
need to do to
you
get
have
ready.
To do to find 8 hours of sleep, that's what you need to do.
Yeah.
8, 9, whatever your body needs. But I would say people think they need less than they actually do when they're in a training block.
Okay.
And then the second piece would be nutrition.
Yeah.
And the nutrition piece feeds into the recovery, so you could bucket those into recovery and say recovery is more.
Yeah, they all overlap, right?
Sure.
You need all 3 for sure. I would say nutrition's the hardest piece. Everyone's different. Everyone has different needs. I think it's even very difficult for a nutritionist to know, All right, because everyone has different needs. So I find that one to be one of the most difficult things to dial in and zero in on. But you got to start somewhere, and just kind of experiment and figure out what kind of works for you. You're good.
Went down the wrong pipe.
Would you recommend Fuel In as a way to help not just with like what you're consuming, but making sure you have good nutrition?
I like it, but I like it because it also plugs directly into my training plan. So it pulls my workouts in and tells me when I should be eating, how much I should be
That's really
eating.
helpful.
So it's helped automate, like I talked about. I don't know if it necessarily automates with everybody in every training platform. So you've got to look at how that's going to benefit you in your training specifically. I know that it integrates with Triathlon. I believe it integrates with Training Peaks. I
haven't tried it.
I'm not a Fuel In ambassador. I know that people that run it are well educated in that field. They've definitely had some hiccups as they're fairly new as well, but they do a good job of working with you, trying to figure out what's going wrong with those. They've worked out a lot of those kinks. I don't know every platform that it integrates with, and I think that integration piece is, in my opinion, the most important, because otherwise you can build out macros and do all the rest of that, but then it's like, well, what if my training changes? My training changes for me. I just go in and I move the training out, and so now it's no longer in the day, and then I update the plan, and it'll update right there within 2-3 minutes. It goes, okay, this is your new macro plan.
Okay.
It does still take some work for me to set the training at the right times within my own platform. Like, it's not hands-free. I love it, but it's not going to be a mind reader ever. So I need to set those blocks aside to go, this is what I'm training, and then it'll tell me when I need to.
All right. Yeah, I'm curious about it. We'll see. We'll see if I'll try it out maybe, just to kind of get an idea of it. But I am curious about it for sure.
Yeah.
I've got a video and film myself doing some Vasa stuff soon. Okay. So let's wrap this up. Give me some like thoughts, guidance, maybe like a couple of steps that someone should probably try to think about as they go into their off season, going into their season, or maybe going off of their racing season into their off season. Just what you think is the most beneficial things that people can do.
Yeah, so I said it before and I'll say it again. Start at the target, work backwards. Look at what's your next season, what you want that to look like. Once you've got that, set your priorities. And those priorities have to include your outside of sport priorities. So set those. Get buy-in from the people that are stakeholders in those priorities, right? So
that's a good point.
I could not do what I do if my wife was not on board with how much time I spend training.
Right.
So get the other stakeholders on board with that. And then once those are set, now work on what are the things that I need to focus on for that training piece of my priorities, and how much time can I allocate to those. And if you don't have enough time to allocate to those, then you need to either rethink your priorities or figure out how to automate in those. And that could be
right. How do you save that time?
Getting a platform like we talked about, or hiring a coach.
Yep.
I think hiring a coach is beneficial, but it's not the most cost effective. It's cost effective, but people don't always necessarily need that in their life just yet. And so I've had that conversation with a few people where I go, hey, I don't think that you benefit from one-on-one coaching, at least with me right now, because I think you can get this out of what you're looking for. And so anytime I sit down with an athlete, I try and ask them what they're looking for out of the coaching, so I can make the assessment of whether I even fit into what they're looking for, because I want to be like Trent, where I'm, hey, my services are not for you.
Right.
So
right.
I think that's the kind of building blocks of how do I make my off season successful. To sum it up, set your goals, set your priorities, work your training into that.
Okay, I like it. What do you think you can do better in the next build season? Anything?
Whew. Every build season is gonna have its own challenges. So, using that framework that I just gave, my priorities are going to shift because
Absolutely.
we'll be moving in the middle of that.
Yes, you will be.
So it'll be, how do I find the ways to make that happen? I think is going to be one of the challenges.
Time management, basically.
Time management, but I'm going to be learning a whole new place too. So I'll be moving out to the Salt Lake City area in the middle of the off season. So how is that going to look? Finding the right ways to be able to train there in the right capacities. Where's the closest pool going to be? How am I going to get my running in an environment where it's going to be way colder than it is in DC, and where there's going to be snow all over the place? And how do I get my cycling in that way? The cycling's probably going to look the same because it's going to be on a trainer in the downstairs until it warms up enough. But the running may look more like that, so it's. I think the biggest thing will just be, I don't know what next off season's going to look like, but it'll look different. So finding how I can work success into that difference.
Yeah. So going back to the community concept, you're on Try Swim Coach, the new platform. And the new platform, you will be able to get DM'd.
Okay.
So people listening, if you're on Try Swim Coach, you can DM Josh any questions you want.
Yeah.
Pertaining to triathlon, I guess.
You can DM me other questions. I'm not sure I'll answer them.
But people who aren't on Try Swim Coach, do you want to give out any way they can reach you?
Sure. Yeah, you can find me on Instagram, I think is the easiest way. I'm at maddog_try_coach. That's the easiest way. You can reach out to me there.
Okay.
That is not necessarily just my coach. That is my personal Instagram, but most of my posts are about either my life, my experience, which has a lot to do with triathlon and endurance sports. So
right.
I'm probably not the most exciting person you're going to follow. I don't do a lot of stories, but there are posts on there that help follow along with my journey.
Yeah, and I think, Instagram is a dual purpose, right? It can be a way for us to follow someone's journey, but it's also this very convenient way to reach out to someone that we aren't connected to or we don't see on a regular basis, right? So if someone has any questions for Josh, hit him up on Instagram or on Try Swim Coach. And if you have any questions for me, I am obviously on Try Swim Coach, and you can hit up the Try Swim Coach Instagram, or you can even email me at dominic@tryswimcoach.com. It's pretty easy to get in touch with me if you have any questions about this. Thank you so much, by the way. I really enjoyed talking about this stuff, and hopefully everyone listening enjoyed most of it. Can't please everybody all the time, right?
I'll be glad if they stuck around for the full hour and a half. Man.
Right? So
hour playing, hour and a half made.
Yeah, exactly. Any last thoughts before we end this?
No, thanks for sticking with us. Thanks for listening.
All right.
I hope you had a race.
All right, sounds good. See everyone later. Bye.